Hi, Saliha. Nice to have you back on the podcast again.
Yes, Adam, it's wonderful being here once again. As usual, I think we're going to have a fantastic podcast here today. Um, Lovely being back. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's good to have you back. And we were saying that we're going to talk around different topics. We're going to talk about like self worth, like self
hmm
growth.
hmm Yes, yes. It's a topic that that's a bit close to heart. I would say it's also something that I'm exploring these days, and I do envision that I will be sharing this with others, so that they can also benefit from the knowledge that I gather.
Mm,
And I think it's something that we all need to look into. Self worth, based what it is connected with self esteem, the
mm,
ability to stand up for yourself, know who you are. That in just a basic scenario, what you could say, what it is that when people don't know how to show up for themselves or stand up for themselves or clearly define what they really want, what happens is that they are faced by situations in their lives where something happens, and then they just don't know what their words are, what they need to say in order for that thing to stop or change, or basically not knowing how to express themselves, right?
mm.
So in that, there's a whole thing that's happening that's based around the core idea of self-worth. And the lack of self-worth can cause you not to step up or take the right actions at the right time, at the right place, for things to work in your favor. Because what we are told is that when you do stand up for yourself and don't compromise and don't, bend yourself down for the other person, or try to, be someone lesser than who you are, then what we are told by society is that you are the better person. But does becoming the better person also mean that you don't stand up for yourself, don't know who you are, and then in a way you make yourself incapable of knowing what it is to be who you are, right? So it's a very deep topic.
Yeah, no, it definitely is deep, and I think I think it's something that we will all kind of, go through and experience to some extent. I think I can definitely relate to it in terms of when I worked for certain people, like certain jobs.
Mm,
I I would kind of put myself aside on the shelf and then just work and work and work because I was so bothered about what the boss would think or
mm,
how
mm,
me leaving would impact that place. So I didn't leave when I probably should have left, and then I
mm,
stayed and then was unhappy, and then
mm.
to some extent within that you kind of have to have that self-worth to think about it, how you feel and what your kind of needs are and what's right for you rather than pleasing a corporation or somebody else. Do you know what I mean? That
Yeah.
kind of is how I kind of relate to it. Because I
Mm,
remember I had a meeting with somebody and he was like, look, if you're not happy, then you need to do what's best for you. Whereas
yeah.
with self-worth, it interlinks in so many areas.
Mm. Definitely, definitely. And as you were saying, where you were working, it's a space where you're surrounded by people. And so a big part of self-worth is to do with surrounding yourself with the right people. So people like us or anybody else, I'm not saying it's just a certain kind of people, it's anyone who's struggling with self-worth. I think we all do at some level. Um, Find it really hard to uh, hold themselves in their position when it comes to other people's words or what they have to say to them. Basically, a person can, be affected by somebody's criticism or the inside monologue, the self-criticism. So it's the outer world where you surround yourself with the right people or the wrong people, and then it's the inner world, which is more crippling because it comes in the most darkest of times, when you're already surrounded by sadness or guilt or other kind of ill feelings that come to a human person when they are feeling lonely and sad, and on top of that, that crippling feeling of self-criticism is worse, because maybe the situation is not as worse, but it's our thoughts that can do that
Mm.
to us. So it's surrounding yourself with the right people, and then also working at your self-criticism, that little person inside who's hard on you. Yeah.
Mm.
Mm.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think like it's that inner voice, isn't it? And really channeling into that and getting to know that part of you, that deeper part of you, because then
Mm.
that deeper part of you, like you said, within is,
Yeah.
ultimately reflected externally, isn't it? So
Mm-hmm.
if somebody is critical about themselves, quite a lot, then
Mm.
they might not
Mm.
be doing the things that they should be doing.
Mm.
And that's reflected in how they,
Mm.
their body language, their tonality, their voice, the things
Mm.
that they engage in. Um,
Mm.
but if you're around, like you said, the right people who
Mm.
ultimately are have their kind of self worth kind of in check,
Mm.
it will
Mm.
ultimately kind of make you kind of think about your self worth and how you're behaving and what you're doing.
Mm.
Do you know what I
Definitely.
mean? Like, so then you can kind of like leverage yourself.
Mm. 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 Definitely. And um, if if people can be nice to others, I mean, most people that I know, I mean, they're very giving and they're very loving and very caring towards others. But very seldom do you find that people really do the same for themselves. I can find so many people out there who say that they have been giving all their lives, or like, just giving love or affection, support to their friends and family. But very few people tend to do the same for themselves. So the question would be, imagine if you could do the same you do for others for yourself. Like if you can be someone else's best friend, can you try to do that for yourself if you are feeling this feeling of this low self-worth, just
Mm,
just trying that same thing. So I think it's not that people are not capable of understanding that they are worthy. It's just flipping the script, and it's just about understanding yourself like a mirror in front of you and saying to yourself, what can I do for you? So it's again
mm.
coming back to this idea of self-worth connected with self-love.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree, and I think like it's definitely that mirroring, isn't it? And by getting to know yourself and who you are, and
Mm.
kind of like you said, like self love as well.
Mm.
Getting to know who you are, self love. You
Mm.
the relationship that you have with yourself is how you, like you said, how you mirror other people,
Mm.
and by getting to know yourself, you're then going to have a good kind of relationship with other people.
Mm.
Because it's like if
Mm.
you're not happy in yourself, how
Mm.
can you expect to have a solid relationship with other people or someone else if you're not
Mm.
okay?
Mm. Mm. The first person you need to be acknowledging or saying yes or no to is yourself.
Mm,
So if you find people in your life who are not adjusting to you, or you find people in your life where, oh, this person's being mean to me or makes me unhappy, well, the first question would be like, what is within me that makes me feel so self, like less worthy?
mm, mm,
I
mm,
would say, I mean, in terms of my self worth, what is my lack of self esteem that is making me feel that what they are saying is actually affecting me? For if a person actually believes that they are pure and good and nice and not a bad person, and somebody comes and tells you you are a bad person and points at you, people who are like narcissists and people like that, why should a person who is a good person and in their heart feel like they are bad too, when if their self-worth says to them, their self-esteem or their idea of who they are tells them that they are fine, then that should not affect you. Not like, I'm not saying that it's like purely completely possible that somebody comes and screams at you and it's not going to affect you, but the constant practice of reminding yourself that you are who you are the way you are, and you're loved, you're worthy, and you're beautiful, or whatever affirmations you want to give to yourself, what that does to you is programs you and gets you ready for anything that has happened, is happening, or is going to happen that's going to be really severe for you, where you won't know what to do. But at least the programming will help you survive. Because what's happening now is that when people don't have self-worth, they go into like this, the survival modes, as you know, the flight and fight mode. And what I recognize more, and that I've experienced more, is like where you tend to go to places where you think you need to find a substitute of what you are missing in others. So if a certain person is not becoming who you think they should be, then you try to find the same thing. And so if you are craving somebody's attention and they're not behaving like that, you can't go craving that from other people. You have to go as your whole self, and then try to find that thing that you're looking for, whether it's a human thing, destination, goal. It has to come from a wholesome place. It cannot be this clingy wanting, if I don't have it, that kind of thing. So it all boils down, this idea of self-worth all boils down to this befriending yourself and everything.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you, and I think like with that, that's probably why a lot of people engage in certain activities or do certain things or drink certain things, not tea, obviously, but I mean like alcohol, engage in, things in excess because they might not have it in other areas, so they're seeking it, you know what I mean, in other areas of life, which are probably detrimental to their health over time. But yeah, it's definitely something that's important and people need to kind of be aligned with, I think. And I think what you said earlier, people who are narcissistic or people who haven't kind of got that kind of self-worth in check, can sometimes project how they feel about themselves onto the other person and say, no, this is you. And it's like, well, no, this, I recognize that it's not me, it's you. And I've had that sometimes in the past, and I've recognized it, and I've said, that no, it's not me. This is how you feel about, yourself. And that, that not to be like negative, but that's kind of how it is. Some people do that, and that kind of like comes into self-worth, doesn't it? Because those sometimes people who don't have that self-worth or the same level, want to push down other people who do have self-worth because it makes them feel bad about themselves.
Definitely. There's a quote that I've got with me, if you don't mind me sharing it.
No, of course.
I really found it interesting. So this is by a person called Jean Shinoda Bolin. And what she says is that when you recover or discover something that nourishes your soul and brings joy, care enough about yourself to make room for it in your life. So many times what it's saying is when you recover or discover something that nourishes your soul and brings joy. So that's like many people do know where to go to find that solace. Then they have a little bit of a mechanism or upbringing or exposure, experience, what they have read, know. They know what is that little thing that can make them happy. So for some people, it can be the spiritual inclination. Some people, it can be just being happy, traveling, whatever it is. People generally, if they go deep inside, they know where the happy spot is. And what the thing is, what doesn't happen is, as this quote goes, it says, care enough about yourself to make room for it in your life. It's that taking that step, it's taking that leap about caring enough. So many people don't take action straight away, which is very understandable, because if you've been through something big, which is you've had a very big shock where your self-worth was really low, and then you have to go up to this level, you can't just go shooting up, right? So it's very understandable when people say they need time, they need to care about it enough. That care factor, it changes everything, because at least they're taking those baby steps from going to being uncomfortable, uncomfortably numb in a way, to being a bit comfortable about being uncomfortable, you know,
Yeah.
and just going with it, like taking a little step, like, okay, I'm going to think about it because it wasn't good for me. So I'm going to at least think about it. And just
Mm.
taking those little thought changes,
Mm.
caring is a big factor about this, because you can get healers, you can get coaches, you can get whatever you want around you, surround you. But if the human person themselves does not care enough to even just start caring, then the healing process, or that shift from unworthiness to worthiness, it can be a bit difficult.
Yeah. No, exactly. And I think people have to be aware of that, and they have to own that, don't they? They have
Mm.
to own what's happening and want to change that,
Mm. Yeah,
because it
yeah.
all starts with ourselves. And like you said with that quote, you
Mm.
know, once you recognize something is of value or benefit to you, then you
Mm.
need to kind of, it's up to you to make that choice to have more of that in your life, isn't it? Like if you,
Yeah,
for example, I don't know, you go for a run and you're like, oh,
yeah.
this is really great. Okay, I'm going to
Mm.
make this time to, you know, select X amount of time in my day to go and do that.
Yeah,
Or,
yeah.
you know, making pottery or doing podcasts or, you know,
Mm.
whatever it is.
Mm. Mm. Yeah, that's it. That's it. And it's just that once you embrace your strengths and your gifts and this beautiful person that you are within, this person who can do fantastic things, like just by doing little things that you like, and then, you know, just giving yourself a pat on the back is where
Mm,
you start. So most of our lives, what happens is that we tend to believe that it's a very human thing to always find appreciation in the other. Like, okay, if this person tells I'm good, then only I'm good. Whereas it should be like, if this person tells I'm good, it's like they see the good within me that already exists. So
mm,
thank you, this person who can see the good in me, to show me that I have good within me. Like sometimes you just need somebody to show you. So not depending on somebody to tell you, but to show you is
mm.
just changes the whole, perspective.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I think like sometimes people can be doing things and always waiting, kind of like, you know, I think we've all probably done it at some point, sometime, you know, waiting
Mm,
for that, you're good at this. Oh, yeah, I am. You know, and then
mm.
sometimes it just takes that little encouragement, doesn't it? You know,
Yeah.
that's kind of how I think a lot of people start out, you know, when they, like probably chefing, for example, if somebody's wanting to be a chef and they're, you know, they're working and they get
Mm,
that person who's a very, very good chef who says, you know, you're really good. It kind of gives
mm,
you that lift. And
mm,
I've had that from people I've worked with in that
mm,
hospitality trade. And
mm.
um, yeah, it does give that boost. But like you said, we kind of have to tell ourselves we are good and not just wait for somebody to say you're good, you know?
Yeah, that's it. That's it. And this whole depending on others to tell you that you are great or good is, it comes down to a very like this childhood place where even in school, if you just start with school, the way our schools
Mm,
are, it's all like this whole grading system. Like you finish year one, then you go to year two, year three, grade one, grade two. It's just like you just get this confirmation from an institution that you are good enough to go ahead. Yeah, I understand that there's a whole thing about learning, there's a whole knowledge acquisition, things like that. Completely understand. But what a kid who goes to school does not know this whole system, how it works. So
mm,
every kid is an individual too. And that can be a very deep subject in itself. But coming back to self-worth and how institutions, make you feel like you are worthy based on whether you get graded and you go to the next class or not, is all very connected. I don't know about the UK or in Australia, you go to the next class even though you might have like low grades or something. It's not dependent on your grades. You just go to the next class and you go to the next class. You don't
right,
stay in the previous class, like you don't repeat.
right.
That concept is
Yeah,
not here. I haven't
yeah.
seen it. Yeah.
No, it's interesting what you said about the school system, because the
Hmm.
things with the school system I just thought was like you're waiting when you're learning, it's almost like you're waiting for an external appraisal from the
Yeah.
teacher, from your mum, from your parents. And
Yeah.
that probably gets hardwired. So we kind of like go through life, we're doing.
Mm.
I'm waiting for this appraisal to say that I'm good at this. You know, it's not happening. Obviously, if it's not happening, I'm not very good. You know, it's
Mm.
that kind of, you know, that we wanting that, oh, you're good at this. And I think
Mm.
when you don't get that, you feel, oh, I'm not good at this then because X,
Yeah.
Y, Z hasn't said this. And yeah,
Mm.
with the school system here, I mean, we have in my school, I went to you know, normal public secondary school.
Okay.
Um, so we had like, you know, middle maths, top maths, bottom maths, and people knew, you know, which was which. And
Mm. Mm.
it's like if you was good in maths, say you was, you know, I was in bottom maths, wasn't very good. If you was then doing really well, they'd move you to the middle maths. And if you did
Mm.
really well in that, they'd move you to the top maths.
Mm.
So, you know, and if you was underperforming, I think that, you know, you would get moved, which, you know, isn't very good for your self-esteem when you think about it. Excuse
Yeah.
me. Yeah, so I remember top maths, top science. It was for a
Mm.
couple of the subjects, but I
Yeah.
think
Mm.
some of the subjects were mixed. But
Mm.
you know that school is important, and we can
Mm.
kind of build our identity based on,
Mm.
you know, school.
Mm. Totally. Totally. It's a big part of our lives. It's and I think with over here, yes, we also have. I just got reminded because I've only done year 12, the higher school certificate here in Australia. Most of my schooling was in Pakistan, and over here, I remember there was a band system. We had bands, so if you were this good in maths, as you said, then you were like in the lower bands, or if you were this good, then you were in the higher bands. Like it went to band 4, band 5. I remember that very, very, very uh, like it's like a very far away memory because I was in year 12 when I was 18, 19. So
Yeah.
it was a very rushed time. It was when my self-worth was very low, and it was all dependent on making my parents happy for the sacrifice, I thought, which, I mean, it was a sacrifice, but for me, I made it very big in my head, as in,
Mm.
because luckily we didn't have too much of a problem when we came to Australia. And now we're getting into storytelling time, as I do
Yeah.
with most of
No,
my
no,
podcasts.
it's good. No, it's fine.
So the reason we did move was my dad had this vision. We have 5 siblings. I'm the eldest of 5, and he had a vision for his family. So he's a very family man. He always thought about the children. The children always came into everything he wanted to do in his life. And at a very young age, he did get married and have children. So both my parents were very young parents. So when they did, their lives pretty much were around how to get our children into a good, stable place in their lives. So they
Mm.
thought there was a time in Pakistan when all the education that was really good, the higher education, was private, and private was extremely expensive, and only
Mm.
for the ones that could afford it. And that private education firstly had a very strict criteria for getting in. So I don't know, like I wasn't academically that good, so I couldn't have gotten that way. And the other way was people were bribing themselves to get into it, which was never a thing that my dad would do. And the
No.
third thing was, the third thing was, he was like, even if people were graduating from those institutions that were affiliated with Singapore, UK, Canada,
Mm.
whatever it was, they were not getting jobs anyway. So the idea was back then was always in the 90s, it was all about getting the job, getting the
Mm.
work, getting into a career,
Mm.
and you would not do that. Was not happening with degrees, right? It was a very blur time. So what parents were doing was sending their one golden child abroad, as they would say, abroad, to England or to Canada or places like that, so they could
Mm.
be the golden child who could get educated and then have a good life. So
Yeah,
if they
yeah.
had 3 children, there would be one child who goes, or that child goes, settles in, and then brings in his little brother, and that was happening. So my dad was
Yeah.
like, whatever. So he
Yeah.
had this idea. He said, I'm going to take all my children. We're all going to go on a permanent residency, which is a better way to get into Australia than to just come in as migrants and then
Yeah.
try for citizenship. So we were very good that way. Like we got our citizenship in 2 years in 2000, and we came in 2002.
Mm.
And in 2004, we already had a citizenship, which is pretty cool because that's the fastest you can get if you come from Pakistan. And that's
Yeah.
because my father, for the 4 years before we came to Australia, was working day and night to get that permanent residency for each and every one of us. So all of that, when I came to Australia, I had this at the back of my mind that he left a very good job. He had a very good job. That happened in the last year, just before we were leaving. My mom left her ailing father, who had just gotten into a coma after a heart attack, and
Wow.
she had to leave because all the tickets were done, everything was done, and it was really hard for her to just leave him there and just come
Mm.
here. So she was kind of like a bit depressed because of that. And then it was the five of us. I mean, I was 18 going on 19, and then I had these four younger siblings, and we're all like 2 and 1 years apart. So my youngest brother was about he was 12 or 11. So when we
Mm.
came here, my school time was pretty hard. I went straight into year 12, and I was coming from Pakistan as a very good life.
Yeah.
I used to get driven to school by a driver. I was pretty spoiled in that way. My beds used to
Wow.
get made. I were even though we were very middle class family, there
Yeah.
were a lot
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
caste systems in Pakistan, and that's how we called ourselves, as in what class you are from, to
Yeah.
say that you can afford certain things. We could afford certain things, but not like my grandparents could. Like they were better off than my parents. My parents were the hardworking ones. Like they were the generation that didn't depend on their parents for the money or things like that. So
Yeah.
that's another story. But what I'm trying to get at is, when I was coming here, I knew that my mom and dad left so much, not just physically, not just materially, but also emotionally behind.
Mm.
Being the eldest, I just felt it so much. And fact was that I went straight to school, and I was being told by the career counselor that you need to go back to year 11 because you don't have those credits you need to have that year 11 and 12 have.
Yeah.
And it was also new for me, and I was like, what am I doing? And the funny thing is, I had I used to cry in the break time, and I used to sit in the library. I used to just pretty much, I had this passcode that the teacher had given me, and I used to use that to use the internet and talk to my friends on MSN and tell them, I'm good, I'm so good here, how are you? It was like looking at the librarian that, no, I'm just working here, because we were not allowed to chat,
Yeah.
right? So then in the beginning, I used to cry in my breaks. Then I stopped crying. Then I used to just go on the internet and just talk to friends. And that helped me. It was like my secret thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'd left really good friends behind, someone who was also important in my life behind. And so I used to write letters and whatnot. I was just in this world. And then my career counselor was like, repeat this. It was a very hard time in my life as an 18-year-old. And I had no friends, because my life before this was all around friends. I had no relationship with my parents in terms of
Mm.
even telling them how I feel.
Mm.
So yeah, that was a long time ago. And that was the beginning of me in Australia. And where I stand now, I'm so happy that a lot shifted because of that move within me.
Yeah.
um, till you don't go to it and through adversity, I really believe you don't find you.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
this is just one of the many stories I went through, and I think
Mm.
everyone, the longer you live, I think it gives you more chances to experience more of this life, as
Mm.
Oprah Winfrey also says in most of her talks. And
Mm.
I like how she says it's the longer you've lived, or she goes like the more you've had of this life. I think the chances of facing situations where you feel the lack of self-worth, lack of self-love, lack of just being who you are or not knowing who you are
Mm.
happens. And I went through many phases, and I'm
Mm.
grateful for it. And people who have known me in Australia have seen me through every phase. And the people
Mm.
who stuck by are my tribe. And the people I'm
Mm.
finding now are my tribe. And then again, it comes back to, just to cut it down now, having the right kind of people around you. it is so important, Adam, to have
Mm.
the right people around you. And I live by it. I live by
Mm.
it.
Yeah, it's definitely amazing, that part of your life,
Mm,
like it's pretty motivating and inspiring because it's like,
mm,
your family, you and your family went from a different country, different place, you didn't know anybody, you had to leave
mm,
people behind,
mm,
going through into, it's got the school system as well, different school system, having to probably redo certain things. It's a
mm,
lot. And I think, like you said, through hard and difficult times,
yeah.
it's how you kind of grow. And I think when you're in that phase and you're in that time where
Mm,
you're going through the motions and it's difficult,
yeah.
you don't
Mm,
see the other side of it, when you're in it. Until like you come through it, you can kind of see how you've grown and you take from those experiences and you grow. And I
mm,
think like what you said, like you kind of have to have the right people around you who support you in what you're doing, support you in what you've been through. And that's something that, like I said, I think a lot about recently as well. Like who you engage with, where your time goes, in all aspects,
mm,
and that kind of comes down. That tribe of people kind of comes down to that self worth as well, because you need to have that self worth.
mm,
To the point
mm,
where you're not going to be unhappy because you're around certain kinds of people. It's
mm,
like, would you hold if you're around negative people, it's like holding something that's very, very hot and it's going to burn your hand. Would you hold on to
mm,
those things?
mm,
No. So why are you
no.
around those kind of people?
Mm,
Yeah, no,
mm,
it's definitely important. And when I was at school, I won't go too much into it for too long, but I was in certain groups of people. Certain groups of people were kind
mm,
of probably the wrong kind of people.
mm,
Something traumatic had to happen to me for me to wake up and realize,
mm,
what I was doing. But
mm,
yeah, ultimately, the people you're around,
mm.
it kind of like you said in that clip I shared. You said the 5 people you engage with is who you kind of become.
Yeah, definitely. That's it. That's it. We are the sum of the 5 people that we hang out with. It's true. And now, because of the internet and all of the social media and everything, those 5 people have other 5 people connected to them. It's always like that.
Mm,
So it's just also how they used to say there, how many degrees of separations were there?
yeah,
6 degrees of separation. They used to say once upon a time. Like there's a space. There's 6 degrees of separation.
right.
Means that everyone is separated. Like if you want to know, for example, if you want to know Glenn Lundy, for instance,
Yeah,
if
yeah,
you didn't know him, if you didn't know him, the theory says that you have at least six people in between to get to him. So there's always a connection to a connection to a connection that gets you there. So you're never really separated from another human
mm,
being. But then that's kind of broken down now. You can
mm,
just directly go into their inbox and say, hello, this is who I
yeah,
am, this is what I do, and
yeah,
do you like me, you don't like me? I'm cool with
yeah,
it because you don't know
yeah,
me, right? So
yeah,
it's very different. It's that's all. Like you can just go, like, because people used to ask me when I used to get guests for my podcast in the beginning, older people,
yeah,
and they would say that, how do you get your guests? And I would say, I just contact them.
mm,
They're like, how do you just contact a person who's a stunt woman in India, for instance? I'm like, well, I liked her, I looked her up, I went to her page, I messaged her, I said, you like me, I do like you. I'm not saying literally like that, but it's
yeah,
like the connotation of the communication that gets you to say yes or no always starts with when the other person tells you that they appreciate what you do. So
yeah,
liking comes down to appreciation. And appreciation, if it's done in a way which is honest from the heart, is again showing that the person what's within them. And
mm,
everybody likes it to be shown, right? And
mm,
especially people like the stunt woman that I was talking to on my podcast, who told me a very interesting thing, which you will be interested to know, is that I asked her, do you ever experience fear even now
yeah,
when you're starting your stunts? And you know what she said? She said, what is fear? I have never experienced fear. I don't know what it is.
Mm.
She has eliminated fear from her life, or she never experienced it, or she never grew into it. And she had a very good grandfather in her life, and I did study a bit about how she grew up. And what I understand is that this woman, this lady, this legend, this human being
Mm.
is doing everything that she wants to do, and also passing it on to others, because she's also a life coach. She also does hypnotherapy, which is
Mm.
the things she's added on to her
Mm.
persona. And it's lovely because she's doing it from that fearlessness, because that's what we all need. We need to stop fearing this unknown, the
Mm.
unknown, this unknown. What is it? What is this that we're fearing? And I think the more embedded that fear is, like for me personally, I do have some of that in me, and I'll be
Mm.
honest with it. I don't mind being vulnerable on camera, as you must have experienced.
Yeah.
And yeah, I would say today I still have a few things inside that I need to work at. But again, that quote I was telling you about, if people care about working towards it, if people care that, yes, it's something that I need to get in tuned with more and more,
Mm.
and start taking little baby steps, even though you don't know where it's going to lead you. Because what is fear? Like, if you look at fear as a destination of, oh my God, this will happen, then that destination kind of freaks you out, because like, I don't want that to happen, right? So if you take the
Mm.
destination idea away, that's one theory that I've
Mm.
developed.
Yeah.
If you take the destination idea away, then you're just going forth fearlessly without that idea of what might happen,
Yeah.
because that's what sabotages you. That whole
Mm.
visual aspect of, ooh, I don't want to be there,
Mm.
kind of thing,
Mm.
right?
Mm.
So if you take that big lump that also becomes a lump in your throat every time you think about it, or that little headache that
Mm.
gets in your head
Mm.
because you stress about it, I'm like, oh, what if this happens? So you just take that
Yeah.
out of your life, just go bye bye, and then you
Yeah.
just go with it. Like, that's what I do. I just go, the way I go into fear is like, okay, I don't like it, and I don't want to think about it. So what do? I do know that I need to take some kind of action towards taking that out, right? It just can't go away from my
Mm.
life, right? So what do? So I identify that fear is there, but I don't
Mm.
let it become like this mountain giant thing that's gonna, not letting me even think. Because what happens is, why do you self-sabotage and you get into self-doubt and everything, and even tell others the same, like reflect that to others and say, I don't know what's going to happen, or like, I can't promise you anything, is
Yeah.
because what happens is that you yourself are dealing with that fear. So I think it's good to be honest when you are afraid of
Mm.
something, accept that you're afraid of it, but then work towards it, because you realize it's not going to help you. Because 5 years
Mm.
from now, you don't want to be in that kind of a situation, right? Then what do?
Mm.
Trust the universe, go
Yeah.
towards it with this happy, joy, gratitude feeling, in terms of uh, going towards solving your fear issue,
Mm.
rather than go like, I have to solve it. Oh my
Yeah.
God.
Yeah.
It's not work like that.
No,
So yeah.
exactly. I think
Mm.
fear is a massive thing
Yeah.
for some people, and it's a very very personal thing if people are experiencing fear. And I think with that stunt lady, she's probably reached a point where she's just in a she trusts in what she's doing, and she's just kind of polarized, and she has a better understanding of fear, and realizes it doesn't
Yeah.
she doesn't need it. And I think like fear's quite a personal thing. It's different for everybody, but
Yeah.
it
It's
kind
very
of goes
personal.
back. Yeah, it goes back to is it like the reptilian part of the brain, how you know
Okay.
fearing the unknown. It goes back to caveman times,
Okay.
fight and flight. um,
Mm-hmm.
and that's there, within us, kind of automatically. And I think it's not letting your emotions override you, and accepting whatever is coming up. And if you're afraid of flying, like, the more you do it, the less scared you get. You know, I think it's the more you do something, you know, like, for example, I used to fear podcasting. You know, I didn't do it for about 2 years before I initially did it because I was
Mm.
afraid of what people might think. I was afraid of being judged and all these, you know, irrational things. But like when you
Right.
actually step into that unknown,
Mm.
opportunities open up. You know, you meet people. I wouldn't
Mm.
have connected with you if I wouldn't have done
Definitely.
podcasting. Things like this.
Yeah.
So, you know,
Mm.
it's what's on the other side of fear, isn't it? You know, what's on the other side of fear is growth, new connections, and
Mm.
all the rest of it. Um,
Yeah.
and I remember when I had anxiety and PTSD, I used to fear going into crowded situations because my first panic attack was when I was taking my GCSEs. I just, for whatever reason, all this anxiety was triggered then. So I
Mm.
hated going into crowded situations. I would fear going into crowded situations.
Mhm.
Um, and your body just goes through a whole roller coaster of emotions. But
Mm.
I would fight it, and I would say, why is this happening to me? And that would make it worse. So,
Mm.
you know, through fear, you kind of have to accept it and kind of, you know, like I said, question it and just go through it. It's the kind of the only way, really, if you do
Yeah.
have fear.
Yeah. That's true. That's true. And I liked how you said that everyone has their own uh, version or belief around fear. It's not a very simple thing, isn't it? Is it? Like I pulled out something from my life, like kind of like touched it, and you also explained something from your life. But that's the best we can do because
Mm.
I always believe that we have to walk towards everything like a collective
Yeah,
and believe whatever topics we talk about because I also podcast and you also podcast, and I think I love this about you, and I've gone with this same idea, and it's that going towards everything like a collective, like putting our knowledges together as the little
yeah,
bits that we know. Some of us could be masters, some I don't know, some of us are experts, some of us have just started getting into all of this, but nobody's lesser or better than anyone else. And whatever we put through is not also to judge anyone's fear or anybody's anxiety or anybody's self-worth. It's just whatever we are learning around the way, the little bits that we have gathered to
mm,
live our lives, or just to affirm, or just to confirm ourselves to ourselves that
mm,
this is a way of living
mm,
that we are adopting in the present. So, would you like to hear about it rather than putting it out there that this is how you think? I think we, both of us, we don't come from that space. We always come
mm,
from the heart space, and it's
mm,
evident. It's with knowledge, it's with analytics sometimes, it's sometimes just a very trust the universe kind of a thing, but it's
mm.
always from here.
Yeah. No, I agree, and I think that's what people,
Mm.
you know, will resonate with, that we're being genuine and we're just, you know, sharing, you know, our advice on things and our experiences and being ourselves, rather than saying, you know, this is how you need to think, this is what you need to do. You know, that, you know, the things that we put out there, it's up to people what, you know, what they want to take from that, you know. And we'll put stuff out there and sometimes I'll say, this is just my opinion, you know, this is
Mm.
not, probably not how you, what, this probably isn't what might work for you. Do you know what I mean? It's what people take from what you do, and that's the kind
Yeah.
of, you know, magic of podcasting, isn't it? You share your
Mm.
opinions, you know,
Mm.
connect with other people, and
Mm.
you know, it's always a pleasure to, you know, connect with you because I feel like we're on the same vibe,
Mm. Mm.
and with your podcast as well. I'm really happy to see, you know, how it's going, and it's really
Yeah.
taken off, and I'm happy. You know, you've got some really good podcast episodes and good connections on there.
Yes, and I'm doing the podcasting uh, with all the support from you and all the people that I have around me. I'm really grateful to that for that. And at the same time, I've started the soul coaching that I'm doing. I'm also in training and also practicing at the same time. I mean, I'm about to start. And it's such a good feeling. I always wanted to give more to people through my experiences, or learn more about it, or get into the depths of all of this.
Mm,
So it's like, I think podcasting has helped me believe more in this way of being, where you can work even deeper within your soul, so that you can be there for others. Every time you hear a story, every time you listen to someone talk, every time you hear somebody's heart telling you their hearts,
mm,
sorrow, or their what they've been through. I mean, a person like me would be like, now how can we create more knowledges for people who, when now at this present moment they're feeling that lack. If
mm,
that story is happening again with someone right now, and that person is feeling alone, and they don't have a human person to talk to, or cling on to, or tell, or not knowing a way to go to. So I
mm,
thought, why not be a way sure, but while learning to be a way sure at the same time, and then find my own way more and more by leading others with me. So for me, it's never been about leading. It's always
mm,
about taking everybody together. Like, let's
mm,
go together. So it's like the same with anything I do. I think and I've realized that about myself, because there are two ways you can be. There are many ways, but for me, it's two. One is you would want to lead, and you want to be like in charge and like follow
mm,
me, or you be like, I'm like you, I'm with you. But if you want to hang on to me, you can, till
mm,
you find your own way. As because I said before, it comes down to the idea of healing. Firstly, in a very spiritual sense, we are healed. There's nothing wrong with us. We are pure, we are fine, we are love, we are healed as we don't need healing. The concept of healing is not something that the soul recognizes. But if it's our thoughts that have accumulated this whole knowledge around healing, that is where we need to work at. And that is where it becomes true that we do
mm,
need to heal, as a human recognition of what they need to do for their soul. So I think in that way, it is very important for people who can be there for others to show up more and more, whether it's for your neighbor, or if it's just for your friend, or if it's in a professional capacity. I think that's the best we can do for humanity where it is now. Yeah.
mm. Yeah. No, that's really, really true, and I think you've
Mm.
kind of really said it in a nutshell. It's really important, and
Mm.
to be there for one another, and to the whole kind of process of what you're in. That general support, isn't it? And
Yeah. Yeah.
it's like
And you
yin
do
and yang,
that.
isn't it?
You were
Yeah.
doing that too. And it's amazing because I just saw someone on LinkedIn who was commenting on one of your podcasts, and he just said something which I can't remember clearly, but he said it's
Greg.
amazing to see how it was a Fearless, somebody from the Fearless program or something. And
Oh,
it
right.
was,
Yeah.
and he said something, it's amazing to see how people who want to share other people's stories, or share that love, or that, and they don't want anything in return as such, yeah,
Mm,
that kind of appraisal. So it made me think, like, people do think about other people doing good. Like, it does push
mm,
them that, okay, if somebody else is doing it, and they are doing it without really having a job, right? So can I not just do it as something that I feel too? Because I think
mm,
on LinkedIn especially, still a very new thing for people to just be a podcasting person, or somebody who, and saying and calling it a job, because it wasn't thought that till you don't earn money out of something, it's called a job. But
mm,
now you can be self-employed as on LinkedIn, and you can call yourself a podcasting person, just because what you're giving out as energy to others. So it doesn't have
mm,
to come back as currency, but what the idea is that you're setting your energy free to whatever kind of abundance it brings. So if, at
mm,
the moment, if it's not coming as currency, it's coming as human being attaching themselves onto you, then
mm.
be it, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
what we need to say to ourselves, Adam, is to say constantly that what I have is what I have, and I'm grateful for it, but I cannot wait. It shows enthusiasm, it shows the excitement. I cannot wait for the expansion of it. So
Yeah.
that's something that is going to happen. And
Yeah.
that's what I see with you.
Oh, thank you. No, I really appreciate that. Really, really means a lot.
Mm.
No, and I see that in you and what you're doing as well. You know, like it's almost like, you know, you see that kind of gradual kind of like snowball roll effect, don't you? That
Mm.
person and that thing that they're doing, you know, just building and creating. And I think that's the kind of magic of it, isn't it? You kind of see that
Yeah.
um,
Mm.
process almost. You know,
Yeah.
like you
Yeah.
think back to when we first did podcasting to
Yeah.
where we are now. We're not the same kind of person that we were back then to where we are
No,
now.
constantly evolving.
And
And we're attaching ourselves to other people who are too, like Glenn Lundy and Paul
mm,
Rogers, and even musicians like that guy Koo. Is that how you pronounce his name?
yes, yes,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, guy Koo. And he like all these amazing people who are just doing it anyway. Like as Mel Robbins
mm,
says, she says, "Do it anyway." As in, you don't want to go to the gym, don't even think about it. Like, because if you
mm,
don't go, you're gonna feel slack, right? So just do it, just go.
yeah,
Whatever
yeah,
happens, happens. What's the worst that could
yeah,
happen? You know, you might
yeah,
just, not get there in time if you're leaving late or something. That's fine. But at least
yeah,
you're doing, like going towards it. Do it anyway. Right.
yeah,
I like that. If you apply that to a lot of things, I think it can be very useful for many people. I'm
yeah,
applying that and trying to go with it.
yeah,
But it's all programming ourselves, isn't it? It's like,
yeah. That's key. And that comes into self awareness, doesn't it, as well? And it's like, you know, it's much better to go try something, fail,
mm,
take from that experience, and not to have
yeah,
tried at all. You know,
yeah,
not trying is far worse than trying and failing. I would rather, you know, have in the past try and fail
yeah,
at something 100 times than not try at
yeah,
all. You know, and then you
mm,
gain experience through failing. You know, you learn about things and
yeah.
um, just showing up. You know, isn't it? Like just
Showing up
show up, just
for
show up.
yourself. For yourself, nobody else,
Mm,
but for
mm,
yourself.
mm.
And it's worthy to show up for yourself.
Yeah.
You don't need people to be clapping for you, or if that happens,
Mm,
that happens. That's like a bonus. But getting up in the morning at 6 o'clock or whatever it is, it's for yourself, and it takes time. It takes time. The longer you've lived in a
yeah.
certain way, with certain habits, with certain not self-disciplining kind of ways, it takes time. But
Yeah.
again, you need to let's sum it up here, which comes down
Yeah.
to
Yeah. Of course.
taking those little steps about caring enough. Just
Mm,
that caring enough comes from a heart space, and then it
mm,
connects to our neurons, and then our neurons are able to reprogram better when you say
mm.
those I am affirmations to yourself. So it all works together. It's
Yeah.
all very strong. We are very strong human beings. We just haven't
Mm.
tapped into it.
Yes. No, I
Mm.
agree. That's a really good point, and I think as well, like, it's so true. And I think, yeah, I hope people take something from this, and it's been, you know, great again to, you know, talk to you. And
Yeah.
people can find you at Instagram, isn't it? Untold Story Told, right?
Yeah, Untold Story Told on Instagram. I'm growing myself there as a soul coach, and I'll be uploading a challenge soon, a free challenge for anyone to be a part of it. It's going to be very soul warming. It's going to be something very spiritually connected to self love. So look out for it. I will be putting up posts about it coming soon.
Awesome. That's great. And
Yeah,
I'll share it for you and put it out there, and
yeah.
be great.
Mhm. Also on LinkedIn, I'm trying to grow on LinkedIn. So
Yeah, yeah,
uh, yes, so that's the new space.
yeah.
Oh, and there's a space up there as well, which
Yeah,
I'm mostly connected to. Sorry, I'm just so connected to that space up there.
yeah, yeah.
I'm with the stars and the galaxies and the universe and trusting
Yeah,
the universe,
yeah.
literally.
We're all part of it, aren't we? We're all connected to it.
Mhm. Yes,
But
yes.
no, but yeah, it's been great talking to you, and I look forward to, you
Lovely,
know,
as
seeing more of your
usual. Yeah.
podcasts, and all the best with your evening.
Thank you so much, Adam. It's been a pleasure as usual. The last time I spoke to you, I was a podcast person. I'm so excited about it. This time I'm talking to you. I'm a soul coach person. And
Yeah,
it's funny because it's like this like, oh, this is who I am. This is who I
yeah,
am. every time. And we were talking about this in the beginning. You were like, action, cut. And it's just like that. It's like retake, retake, retake. And I'm ready
Yeah,
for any retakes that are to
yeah.
come. I'm just ready for all the flow. I'm ready for all the evolving. And I wish everyone who's listening to this podcast today love, light, peace, and blessings.
Mm. No, it's lovely. Yeah, no, exactly. And, you know, I think, you know, you have to be open to it, don't you? You know, and I think you're open to change and new things, and I think that's great. And hope people take a lot from this.
Yes. Thank you.
No, you're welcome. Have a nice evening. Great
You
talking to you.
too.